job interviews can be stressful, can be fun, can be pointless, right? It can be all those things, but when you're looking for a job, it is a necessary step to you getting employment and getting that money. So what are some tips to know about interviews, the process, the thinking behind it? Why do they ask such stupid questions, right? We're going to go into that a bit today. But first, for those new to the channel, hi, my name is Rennie. I'm the Unemployable Counsellor. And for those of you returning, thanks. Thank you for coming back and checking it out. I really, really appreciate that. And if anyone wants to subscribe, I would appreciate it. Share, let's get the word out. And tell anyone who will listen and get them to subscribe too. Right on. Okay, so here we go. Interviews. So let's start back. Right? You're looking for a job, or maybe you're in an organization that you want to move up, and there's always an interview process that goes through that. So you can discuss and talk, and they get a better sense of who you are. Now, if you've been in an organization for a long time, clearly they're going to have an idea of what to expect with you when you go in for that interview. So how do you throw down your ace? How do you put down the trump card? How do you get through that situation, conveying all you want and let them know that what they think they know about you isn't all, that there's more there. It's just the first layer of that stinky onion, right? You got to peel it through. Okay? How do you deal with that? And let's say you're looking for a brand new job, you apply somewhere and you go in cold. You have to make an impression in that 45 minutes to an hour. It's not always easy. And sometimes the questions they send you might not even be related to what you think you're going to be doing, but they want an overall sense of how you would conduct yourself in situations that may or may not occur, right? Does that make sense so far? Well, let's break it down a little bit further then. I always found with the interviews, the larger the organization is, and if you're moving up from within, those ones are a little more selective. And I'll say it like that because I once had an old VP tell me that, well, you gotta take care of your aces, your rising stars. You want to make sure they succeed and get opportunities. Okay. And I always thought about that. I'm like, okay, you're going to see people that you think should move up or should deserve to move up. But is that at the expense of other people? Or is that at the expense of just this is what's best for business? There's a lot of times I found that when you work within an organization, they already know who they want for the job in their head. And sometimes the interview process is formality. But if you're coming in on the ground floor, then it's wide open because then they're looking through that ocean of people to try to find people further to work there who they feel will fit and all that kind of stuff. So that, I think, is a little more of a, we'll just say, fair practice, right? Because you don't know the person. There's no bias there, right? So how do you get yourself noticed when you're putting that interview in, or when you put in your resume to even get to an interview? What are you doing to make sure you get noticed for that? And I've talked a lot in some previous videos about resumes and about, when you're working in a work environment that might not exactly fit your ethical code, how does that work? But in terms of interviews, if you're going in there stone cold and you give them the interview and they're sitting on the talk, if there's one thing that you need to do, it's you're going to brag about yourself, and you're going to brag about yourself hard. Not to the point where you're being like, oh man, what an arrogant dick. No. You can go in there and say, well, I've done this, this, and this. I know how to do this. I've done this. I've worked with this, right? That's what they want to know, right? They want to see where you can go. And I always thought, my view of this has always been put it out there, right? Because there's sometimes I've seen situations like, holy shit, this guy is more qualified than I am, right? And then that might just cut you off because you're not. But that's just something you weren't meant to be, is the way I look at it. But if you're looking at from resumes, you sit down, you talk to them, they'll ask you standard questions. But you gotta get yourself out there, and you have to blow your own horn because they're not going to do it for you. They're not going to say, oh, it says here you worked with this. No, you got to tell them that, and you got to be precise, and you have to be definite. Okay? So when you go into places, it's like, you make eye contact, you smile, right? You tell them factual information. If you're going to make up stuff to get a job and you get the job, eventually that stuff's going to come out. And it's like, didn't I interview you? It said you were a surgeon, right? And you can't even put a Band-Aid on, right? Those sorts of things. They'll come back. It's got to be rooted in truth, or else you're going to get exposed and you're not going to last very long at that work environment, okay? So they'll ask you questions like conflict. Ooh, how do you handle conflict? You know they're going to ask questions like that, so you should have examples prepared ahead of time so you can just kind of say it and get it out there. Oh, it's like, well, yeah, I worked with this guy. We didn't get along, so, you know, he was doing stuff I didn't approve of. I talked to him about it, worker to worker. He told me to go to hell. Didn't materialize. It got worse. I went to my supervisor. We followed the conflict resolution steps. That's what happened, right? You can break it down with more details than that, but you need to have an example and you need to be able to walk the interviewers through that example with the steps you did, right? That'll show that, okay, not only does this person know what they're talking about in terms of conflict, they handle it in an upfront adult manner, and that there doesn't appear to be any deviousness or any mischievousness being done on the outside of it. It's just pure blank what it is. This is what it is. Because they're going to want you to come in and come to work your 8 hours, go home. We all know it doesn't always work that way because we get entangled with maybe people we work with, situations, bias, feelings come into play. It's hard to remain neutral once you're in a position because you're going to have an idea about something or maybe not like something. And that's just the way work environments go. But in the interview process, that is your one time when you can just say, okay, look, this is what I've done. This is what I do. This is how I do it. Am I open to adapting those skills? Absolutely. Am I flexible about it? Absolutely. But this is the way I've been taught, and this is the way I approach problems. Okay? There's nothing wrong with that. The more honest and upfront you are about it, the easier it is. Because they're going to watch things with you like, are you comfortable in the interview process? Asking questions, does that make you nervous? Does that make you whatever? And it's okay to be nervous about an interview, but once you're in there, you really have to turn it on. And you got to bring your A game. So you got stuff like conflicts. Another thing would be like, tell me about a time when management put forth a policy that you disagreed with. How did you handle that situation, right? That kind of stuff. If it was things like, oh man, gel nails. They don't want me to have gel nails, and I disagreed with that, so I went and I did it anyway. Okay, they're not gonna be like, oh, what an independent forward thinker. No, that's not how that's gonna work. So, okay, so instead of doing anything about it, you just silently protested and did it anyway. So what happens if you would have got caught? Would you went home and take your nails off? Would have been a larger issue. Just things like that. Okay. Be specific, be precise, and make sure every story you tell has an ending. Because then if it's open, well, is it still like this? Does it still happen? Right? Those are questions for the employer is going to have in their head. And when they're talking about the interview after, because they will, because a lot of times interviews will have a pass-fail mark, right? So it might be like, okay, well, every question's worth 5 points. And at the end of this, if you have 50, that's a pass. And if you have less than 50, it's a fail. So someone gets 49 and then they're done, right? So, I mean, you got to think about those things through. It boils down to how bad do you want the job. If you want the job that bad, you should put your best foot forward and try to do what you need to do to get it. So you got questions like that, okay? Questions, rudimentary questions like, have you ever worked with this before? Tell me about your experience working with a large group of people. Tell me about your experience, right? Those sorts of things. Do you have WMIS? All those sorts of factors. What you gotta do is tell people, yeah, I worked here from this, and this is what I've done. I've supervised these people. I worked with these people. I've been a part of these initiatives out in the community. I've done these things. You have to you have to make that tapestry, man. You have to fill the cornucopia full of all the goodness that you've done in the work environment so they can look at it and go, okay, this one's pretty good. That's how you get an interview. Eye contact, be pleasant, roll with whatever they ask you, right? If you have a good sense of humor, you can, if that's part of your charm, make a little, you can show a little bit of humor, show a little bit of your personality. That's okay. But you're not buddies. You're not there for coffee. You're there to promote yourself, right? So when you go into an organization that you're new to, that's how you got to approach these things. You have to do it that way. If you go in there not saying anything and they have to guess or they try to pry it out of you, they're not going to bring you in there because they're thinking, okay, then when you're in the work environment, am I going to have to, am I going to have to tempt you with, there's a donut? You know what I mean? Like, how is the motivation going to be for you to do the work you need to do, right? So you have that piece, and then if you're working for an organization, you're trying to move your way up, then all you have is your work record. They'll ask you questions, but at the end of the day, they're either going to have an idea in their head of who they want in that role, and it'd be up to you to make sure that that idea is you. So how do you do that when you're already working at a place? Well, a lot of the same steps. A lot of the traps people get caught into is once they get a job, they figure that's done. Got this job now, it's all good. No, you still got to keep working at it, because you got to not only keep the job, but if you have ambition and you want to go higher, you have to do those things to do it. And you can do ambition with integrity, right? Because you should, not everything is about fucking people over, right? Some people have the sense that that's just business. Maybe in some cases it has to be that way. But if you have a smaller organization, that just leads to more trouble, more turmoil, and you'll be fighting the same battles all the time because they'll never get addressed, right? There's always someone on the outside waiting to stab me in the back. And I've worked in a lot of different work environments, and sad to say I've worked in those type environments as well, as I think we all have had people we worked with where it's been like, I helped you, and at the end of the day, you were the first one in line to do the stab, right? That's the way it goes. It's tough. When you're in scope, you have a union, right? You got those sorts of things. As you move up, you become out of scope. So you're not in the entrenchment. You're not tied up with those facts. You're not connected to that realm. You're bound to the contract, but you're bound to it on the managerial side of it, which is a different story, right? So, if you're in scope and you do an interview and you think it was unfair, you can go to them for that. If you're out of scope, you don't have that option. And I think and that's something that I think as you get into a work environment, you got to realize that, can you do that? And the best efforts don't always pay. I've been out of scope for about 20 years in different roles, and I realized a lot of times when what you want to do or what needs to be changed is $2,000 and you're the only one who wants to do it, you're not going to win that. You're going to lose that. And you might lose a battle, but you don't lose the war, even though it might appear that way. And if you're out of scope, you have to understand that you're on your own to a certain degree. Now, I haven't been aware of these, but I have heard stories about, there's always those tales from out-of-scope managers that'll grovel to the union wanting their support or backing. You should never do that. Not only does it make you look ineffectual and weak, but that's not their role. Their role is to help their paying members. So if for out-of-scope guys to be groveling at the feet of the union, I disagree with that wholeheartedly. And at some point, a person's shame and worldview needs to come into that, because if that's what you think, if you're doing whatever you need to do to keep that job by doing stuff like that, then you shouldn't have that job. It's kind of the way I look at it. But we're on interviews. So interviews, right, as you go up further the chain, you realize that it's a little more familiar because they might know you more. There's some openness. There's nothing there that should hurt the interview process, but their opinions of you as a worker could inhibit the promotion process, right? Maybe there's someone that gets along with people better. Maybe there's someone that has more education. You have to be open to that. But if you're looking at just the merits, then you need to tout those merits, like I said. If you go in there saying, well, you know what I'm like. No. If I ever had to interview someone, and if it was someone that I knew or someone that I had crossed paths with, I always kind of say the same thing. It's like, look, you have to approach this like you've never met me before, because I'm approaching this like I never met you. So if there's anything you need to toot your own horn about, you need to do it. Don't expect management to jump in and talk about the great things you did. Remember last year when you saved this money by doing this? They're not going to do that. You need to do that. You need to sell yourself, and you need to sell yourself to them on why you should have that job. why you should do that job and why you're the best person for that job. Okay? It's like, going into the resumes for a bit. For me, I always liked merit-based. I always thought that was fairest. You want the best person for the job and how they're going to do the job, right? It shouldn't matter if you're friends or related, whatever. I've had situations where I've let things go because I was maybe friends with some people, and it just come back to bite me in the ass, and you realize you can't do that. You can't be friends with the people that you're managing. Even if it's just you and other managers, you still need to keep those guards up because it's cutthroat, right? It is. Monty Python did a sketch about corporate raiders. They're like pirates and the buildings are going. That's kind of how it is. There is no right or wrong to it. There's just, this is how it's always been done, is the tagline you're going to get. Oh, we always hired like this. Oh, we've always done this. That doesn't make it right. So the only way you can combat that going in for an interview is to bring your absolute best game you can, tout all your accomplishment, have your examples done ahead of time, know what you're going to say, know how you're going to answer. They throw in curveballs. Like I used to like to interview some curveballs, stuff like, tell me about when you made a mistake when you're working. How did you fix that mistake? What were the ramifications, right? All those things that happen. What they're asking you is questions on leadership, integrity. How do you conduct yourself under pressure? Do you work well with others? Those are the key things that people want to know, especially if you're working in an environment where things might be slack, but when they're not slack, they need to know that someone's going to be there to not only connect with that, but do that job to get it done. That's what they're hiring. They're not hiring you because you're a sparkling personality and you have a winning smile. They're hiring you because they think you can cover those things if they need it. Does that work out? No. Is when we hire a home run? No. But there's mentorship and coaching that goes along with that. So even if you get a job and you're not 100% perfect or 100% sure of it, there's that mentorship and coaching piece that needs to work with that to be successful. So you're going in to go back to the interviews, you're going in for an interview, you give your piece, you say your part, right? They can't ask you questions like your age, if you're single, you have kids, right? Like they can't ask you certain things. What's your sexual preference, right? They can't comment how good you look, which is why I'm 100% against people putting their pictures on resumes. Don't do that. Because if I'm hiring you, if your picture is what's going to sell me on bringing you in for an interview, then I'm not looking at the right things here, am I? Because it should be merit-based. Okay, you've worked this place, you've done this, you got this one education. Oh, but the photo you put on your resume showed some cleavage, right? Which is what happens. I remember one time about quite a few years ago, I got a resume and the picture on the front was a full 8x10, which was more cleavage than head. And you start to think it's like, okay, so you're applying for a job that has nothing to do with anything physical, but the first step forward you put forth is sending me a picture of your chest area and part of your face. No, don't do that. Because if they're hiring based off that, then you already know what the work environment's going to be like. And an employer, I won't do that because you don't want that at all. It's not about how you look or anything like that. It's about the skills you possess to get the job. Okay, so just things like that. Keep it professional. You can be, like I said, you can have some humor, you can joke around a little bit, but you keep it professional and you keep it on the line. If you're going to start moving things and starting to be their buddy, then it's going to get lost. Because when I hire people, I don't hire people to be my friend. I hire them because I need you to do this fucking job, right? There's a need there that needs to be filled. And people can only talk so much before they realize, or before others realize, that they don't know what the hell they're doing or they're a fraud. And that's where that probation period comes in, but that's a chat for another time. We're just looking at how do you get in the door. That's how you get in the door. You be professional, make eye contact, you come prepared, you're showered and you look presentable. I don't mean showing skin, I mean you're just dressed professional. Okay? Things like that. right? And don't dazzle them with, oh yeah, my daughter knows your daughter and blah, blah, blah. That's not going to matter. What's going to matter here is, can you do this job that I need you to do? In a fair process, that's how it'll go. But as I said, sometimes it's not always a fair process, especially when you're in an organization, you're trying to work your way up. If it's in scope, you have that union backing. If not, then you're just at the mercy of whatever that decides, right? And I know there's been lots of issues with organizations maybe not being above board, or not addressing their own internal issues until an external force kind of forces their hand. And in that case, usually people that are doing that get replaced anyway, so it's not really going to matter. But the organization itself isn't the issue. It's that you want the job, and that's how you do the job. You can't expect to go in there and not answer any questions and come off like a complete idiot and expect to get that job. You can't. That's the biggest thing, is I think too, especially people coming out of school, there's a sense of entitlement, because with school you get taught, oh man, you're going to go conquer the world, and I get that, rah, rah, rah. You got to give that speech. But then when you get into the real world and see how things actually work in those work environments, it's not necessarily as advertised. I've experienced that when I left school and I got working, where I'm like, what the? This is not in school. They said this was stuff people get fired over, but here it's common practice, right? You need to be able to reconcile that, and you need to be able to work with integrity, and you got to show that in the interview process by talking about things like, okay, no, I'm a firm believer, I work 8 to 4, I do my job, go home, work-life balance, talk about those kind of things. You can list a couple of hobbies you have. Oh, I dig graves in my off hours. It's for the stress relief, right? Whatever the case may be. Okay, I don't want to go too long here, because I'm kind of weaving in and out. But when it comes to interviews, put your best foot forward. Like I said, make eye contact, be presentable, make sure you know what you're talking about. Study a little bit. If there's a new organization, read up a little bit on it. Get that information, so when you go there, you can say, well, I read, you guys were founded in 1972 or blah, 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 right? You can at least show that you want the job enough that you're doing your due diligence. That goes a long way. It's not just, I'm out of school, I have this piece of paper, you have to hire me because look what I did. No, you need to work it. You need to display why you should be the person for the job, and not just because you're thinking that it's deserved, I'm owed this. No one's owed anything when they're looking for work. Like, that's the one thing that there's all kinds of things and factors for people to get hired. I know people that got a job because they're friends with someone and it didn't work out, right? Because it's your friends. That's the downfall of a lot of businesses, right? Where all of a sudden you have a soft spot for your friends or your friend, and then exposes you, and then they're often the ones that kind of twist the knife. So, you have to be prepared for that sort of stuff. Okay? Listen, if you are applying for jobs, good luck. I wish you all the best. Remember, prepare, be presentable, be yourself. And most importantly, brag yourself up like you've never bragged before. Seriously, talk about the accomplishments you did. Talk about the stuff you've done, your education, what you learned, who you worked with. Those sorts of factors matter, because you're painting the picture of not only am I have this piece of paper, but I've done this and I've experienced this and I find I work best like this. Those kind of things will get you into a role a lot faster than just being like, well, no, I got my degree and I meet the education requirements, so you should hire me, right? Or I can do this job better than that guy, you should just hire me. Well, based off what? Based off what? It's okay to have a high opinion of yourself, but it's another thing to just be a complete dickhead, right? And talk about things like that, because you can talk yourself out of a job as quickly as you can talk yourself into a job. If the guy working is like, no, I've been through a situation like that, or it didn't work out well, and already you're on the negative side of things. Personal reflection or personal view isn't usually incorporated into it, but we all know that it creeps in. Government has certain standards that they can't go, and it's good that's the case, but it's a vibe. You meet with someone, and if you feel like, I don't really think they're being truthful, based off what? Just based off what I'm feeling, guess what? You're on the no pile. Honest, direct, eye contact, brag yourself up. All right, this turned out a lot longer than I was planning, but thank you for checking. If you stayed to the end, wake up. We're done now. I'm going to let you go, and remember to like, share, subscribe, and good luck on the job hunt, and we'll be back soon. All right, take care of yourselves, everybody.